Already for us this morning. Slee, a very good morning to you. For those who might have forgotten about Mcebo Dlamini and exactly why he's in court, can you just bring us up to speed on how we got here to the point where this case actually begins today, the trial?
Now, if our viewers would remember, a few years ago, around 2015, we saw an uprising basically from students across the country who were against what was then a fee increment of around 8%. It was due that in the following year, in 2016, the university fees were going to go up by around 8%. And at that point, students were saying enough is enough. We cannot have registration fees sitting at around 10,000 Rand in some universities. In fact, the way that the fee increments were going, it was basically what they were saying, a systematic attempt at excluding majority of students across the country who are poor and come from very underprivileged backgrounds. So, of course, we then saw a movement which necessarily began here in Johannesburg at the Wits University. It spread to UJ, and then it spread basically across the country, and that is where we saw these protests, which really did begin peacefully, then starting to get violent, and that was when we saw a lot of police presence inside universities such as Wits, which is where Mcebo Dlamini was one of those fees must fall leaders. If you would remember, he was very much in the front lines of that movement, advocating for free higher education. And what we saw basically come out of that is clashes between students and police, and then we saw several arrests of students across the country for charges related to those fees must fall protests. And that is how we find ourselves basically here today at the trial, which is set to begin, of fees must fall activist Mcebo Dlamini. We've already seen a number of other cases, such as one in Durban of Bonginkosi Khanyile, some other students in Pretoria. In fact, there's one who is now currently serving an 8-year sentence related to those fees must fall protests. And since then, we've seen students saying that former President Jacob Zuma did announce fee-free higher education, which is a vindication on their part that the fight that they were fighting was a good fight, it was a worthy fight, and it does not deserve that students should now languish in prisons for a just cause, for a cause which was acknowledged by the former president by instituting fee-free higher education. And so we have seen how Dlamini, a few months ago, in fact, walked around 56 kilometers from Auckland Park to the Union buildings to deliver a letter asking the president to give a presidential pardon to all students who were involved in those protests and who are facing jail sentences at this stage. We know, of course, that from the Justice Ministry, although they say they sympathize with the plight of the students due to the separation of powers, the Minister of Justice says that he cannot intervene to give presidential pardons. The most that he can do is help these students to write letters to the president saying that the NPA, as the Justice Ministry, would not oppose for these kind of processes, these court cases, to be concluded outside of court.
And Slee, I mean, we know that the fees must fall movement has sort of quietened down a bit. I mean, like you said, the issue has not gone away. It is still there, and we wait to see what happens with many who seek tertiary education. But what kind of support? I mean, Mcebo Dlamini has continued to sort of highlight the issue. He, like we say, did that long walk from Auckland Park to the Union buildings. What kind of support is there for him, though, with the actual movement itself not in the front line anymore?
We've seen basically that what we know from the support base of Mcebo Dlamini, that many students from Wits continue to support his court case. They are almost here all the time when he's due to appear in court. We, of course, understand that during the beginning stages of his trial, we saw Advocate Dalimpofu coming out to support Mcebo Dlamini, as well as the EFF. We're now seeing that now that he's actually running for a position position in the ANC Youth League. We understand that today there may be a presence from that particular region. We expect students, of course, to come out as well again today to support him in the start of this trial. And of course, we've seen other students facing similar charges, basically supporting Mcebo Dlamini as well. But of course, he is the only one facing these charges, and he has said on a number of occasions that pleading guilty is just not an option for him because it would really affect his future, which is something that the Justice Ministry was saying, that in order for presidential pardons to be granted, there needs to be an admission of guilt or some kind of wrongdoing. And these students have continued to refuse to do that, saying that admitting guilt would be admitting that they did something wrong, which they didn't. They believe that they fought a good fight. They fought a fight which was worth fighting for. So we await to see the outcomes of whether this trial will actually begin, because it has been postponed for a number of times.
Thanks very much for that update there, Silindelo Masikane, following the trial of Fees Must Fall activist Mcebo Dlamini.